The night before my wedding should have been about laughter, champagne, and last-minute jitters. Instead, it became the night everything broke. I wasn't supposed to overhear them. My father, Thomas Carter, charming in public, cold in private, stood with Daniel in the hotel lounge. His voice cut sharp, low, like he wanted the words to slice. Thomas, hushed but firm. Daniel, be smart. Rachel is 38. She's too old for kids. You want a family, don't you? I froze behind the corner wall, every letter of his sentence pressed into my chest like a knife. Daniel didn't defend me. He didn't laugh it off. He didn't even argue. He just stayed silent. And in that silence, I heard something louder than betrayal: doubt. I could have walked in. I could have screamed. But instead, I turned away. My heels clicking down the hallway sounded louder than my father's voice, louder than Daniel's silence. That was the moment I realized. My wedding might be tomorrow, but the life I thought I was walking into had already ended tonight. People always saw me as the daughter who needed saving, the woman waiting to be chosen. They never looked deeper. Maybe that's why my father thought he could measure my worth in years, or in wombs. But here's what no one at that wedding rehearsal knew. I didn't need saving. I never did. By day, I was Rachel Carter, the bride-to-be. But by choice, by will, I had built something far more powerful. A design firm in Manhattan that bore no family name, no family ties. Carter never appeared on the letterhead. Hayes never touched the contracts. My name wasn't there, because I wanted the work to speak louder than the signature. 3 years earlier, I'd stood in a rented studio with a cracked laptop and a coffee maker. Today, that studio had grown into 3 floors of glass and steel overlooking Fifth Avenue. 40 employees, clients who trusted me, not my father's reputation. And the money? More than enough to buy freedom. More than enough to never need approval again. I'd kept it all silent. My family thought my little design projects were just hobbies. They laughed at the long nights, the empty weekends. But I had been building something real, brick by brick, in silence. So when my father told Daniel I was too old for kids, I smiled through my tears. Because he had no idea. I was already mother to an empire. The next morning, while the wedding planners drowned in roses and champagne flutes, I didn't go to the bridal suite. I went to my real sanctuary, my office. Carter blood didn't build these walls. I did. The sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling glass, catching on sketches pinned across the boardroom wall. Tall buildings, luxury homes, art spaces, all creations of my firm. My firm. The hum of designers and assistants floated through the hallways, each one depending on me, trusting me. Here, no one asked me my age. No one measured my worth by my ovaries. They measured it by deadlines met, visions delivered, and results that spoke louder than promises. I walked past the conference room where a meeting was already in session. My partner, a woman 10 years younger than me, shot me a smile that wasn't pity, wasn't judgment, just respect. Rachel's inner thought. This was my real life. Not the lace gown hanging in the hotel closet. Not the perfect future my father kept trying to script for me. I'd learned long ago that silence is the sharpest weapon. When people underestimated me, I didn't argue. I worked. When they laughed, I planned. When they doubted, I delivered. And now, with everything at stake, I knew I had the strength to walk away from a wedding if I had to. Because the truth was simple. I had already married my resilience. Weddings have a way of amplifying whispers. When a bride doesn't show up to her own rehearsal brunch, the silence spreads faster than perfume in a crowded room. By noon, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, group texts. My cousin Emily's messages filled the screen. Where are you? Everyone's asking. Daniel looks nervous. Your dad is furious. At the hotel ballroom, I knew the air was buzzing, guests speculating, bridesmaids wondering if I'd gotten cold feet, aunts whispering about my age like it was some dark secret. But instead of rushing back, I stayed in my office, calm, focused. While the world spiraled with assumptions, I was reviewing blueprints, sipping black coffee. And that calm unsettled them more than panic ever could. Because when a woman doesn't scramble to explain herself, people start to wonder what she knows that they don't. By late afternoon, the first messenger arrived. Emily, my cousin, my almost sister growing up, showed up at my office uninvited. She had that frantic bridesmaid energy, perfume too strong, curls starting to fall, and a voice that could cut glass. Emily, nervous laugh. Rachel, what are you doing here? The rehearsal dinner starts in an hour. Everyone's losing their minds. I leaned back in my chair, calm. I know. Her eyes flicked across the office, the glass walls, the buzzing assistants, the skyline stretching behind me. She'd never stepped into my real world before. Emily, lowering her voice. People are talking. They think, you're running away. That maybe Dad was right. There it was, wrapped as concern but dipped in venom. Dad was right. Rachel, measured, steady. And what exactly was he right about, Emily? She hesitated. She couldn't say it. Couldn't repeat my father's words. Too old for kids. To my face. So instead she smiled that thin smile, the one relatives give when they're secretly rooting for your failure. I'm just saying. Daniel looked crushed. If you want to fix this, you should hurry back before it's too late. I stood, crossing the room slowly, heels clicking against polished wood. I placed a hand on the glass wall and looked out at the city. My city. Rachel, quiet, almost whispering. Emily, too late for what? She didn't answer. She couldn't. She just bit her lip and looked away, unsettled by the fact that for the first time in her life, she didn't hold the upper hand in the conversation. If Emily had seen the truth, then I knew. Others would follow. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be candlelight and toasts. Instead, it turned into an ambush. When I finally walked into the hotel ballroom, every eye turned. The air was thick with whispers, champagne glasses half raised but frozen. My father stood at the center, rigid in his navy suit, with Daniel at his side. Thomas, sharp, public smile hiding anger. Rachel, finally. Do you have any idea the embarrassment you've caused? I didn't flinch. I walked past him, straight to the table, and set my clutch down slowly. The sound echoed in the silence. Rachel, calm, voice steady. No, Dad. The embarrassment wasn't mine last night. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. He hadn't expected this showdown in front of half the wedding party. Thomas, snapping, voice low but venomous. You're sabotaging yourself. Do you know what people are saying? That you're unstable, that you don't even want this marriage, Rachel, meeting his eyes. Maybe they're half right. The room gasped. Forks clinked against plates. Daniel, finally stepping in, voice unsure. Rachel, I didn't know what to say last night. He caught me off guard. I turned to him, my voice softer, but sharper than any blade. You didn't need to say anything perfect, Daniel. You just needed to stand up for me. And you didn't. Silence. Heavy. Brutal. My father's hand tightened on the back of a chair, his jaw clenched. You'll regret this. You're walking away from a man who loves you because of pride? I looked at him, really looked, and saw not a father, but a man terrified of a daughter he couldn't control anymore. So I stood taller, slid the engagement ring from my finger, and placed it on the table between us. Rachel, firm, final. I'm not walking away from love, Dad. I'm walking away from chains. The ring sparkled under the chandelier, a symbol, not of loss, but of release. And then I turned, heels echoing like a gavel, and walked out. When I walked out of that ballroom, I thought silence would follow me. I was wrong. By midnight, my phone was a battlefield. 23 missed calls. Voicemails stacked one after another. My father's voice in the first. Angry, commanding. Thomas, voicemail. Rachel, enough of this nonsense. You're humiliating yourself. Fix this before it's too late. The second was softer. My mother's voice, trembling, rehearsed. Linda, voicemail. Sweetheart, he didn't mean it like that. He just wants the best for you. Don't throw everything away over a misunderstanding. And then Daniel's voice, hesitant, desperate. Daniel, voicemail. Rach, please. Let's talk. We can work through this. Don't let one comment ruin our future. But it wasn't one comment. It was years of them. Years of being measured, diminished, told my worth was tied to something I might never be able or want to give. By morning, the whispers had turned into full-blown gossip. Friends texting screenshots of social media posts. Bride missing? Cold feet? Drama at the Hayes Carter wedding? I sat in my apartment, coffee growing cold in my hands, scrolling through the noise. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Pressure is supposed to break you, but when you've lived under it long enough, it becomes the reason you stand taller. It didn't take long for silence to end. My father was never a man who let go of control willingly. 2 days before the wedding that wouldn't be, they showed up at my apartment. My father, my mother, Daniel, Emily trailing behind, arms crossed like a spectator at a boxing match. The knock on my door wasn't polite. It was a demand. When I opened it, they swept in like they owned the place. Thomas, booming. This has gone on long enough. You're coming back with us. We'll fix this. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, letting them storm my living room. My mother's eyes darted everywhere. Pictures on my walls, awards, sketches framed like artwork. It was the first time she'd ever seen the life I'd built without them. Linda, soft, pleading. Rachel, people are talking. Do you want to be remembered as the bride who ran? You're making a scene. Rachel, cutting in, sharp but calm. No. Dad made the scene. Daniel stood by it. I'm just refusing to play along. Daniel stepped forward, his face pale, hands shaking. Daniel, voice breaking. Rachel, please. I love you. I panicked. I didn't know how to answer him. But we can still fix this. We can move past it. I studied him. This man I once thought was my anchor. And I realized, love isn't silence when someone cuts you down. Love is standing in the fire with them. Rachel, steady, final. You didn't stand with me when it mattered, Daniel. And if you can't do it once, you'll never do it again. My father's fist hit the table, rattling the picture frames. You're throwing away everything for pride. I stood taller, my voice low, unshakable. No, Dad. I'm throwing away your control. The room froze. My words hung heavier than his fists. For the first time in my life, Thomas Carter had nothing to say. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that echoes louder than any scream. The morning the wedding invitations should have guided guests to the chapel, a different message hit their inboxes. An email, direct, unapologetic, from me. Subject: the wedding is off. Here's why. I didn't drag out the details, just the truth. My father believes my worth ended with a number. My fiancé didn't defend me when it mattered. I will not marry silence, and I will not inherit chains. No drama, no blame games, just facts. Clean, surgical. By noon, the the whispers had turned into wildfire. Friends texting me screenshots of social media, people applauding the statement, women sending messages of support, colleagues sharing it with words like strength and power. And then came the part I'd planned quietly, weeks before, an announcement I'd been holding back. Carter and Hayes might have been the event of the season, but Carter Design Group was about to dominate the year. A press release hit the news. My firm had signed a landmark contract with one of the biggest developers in Manhattan. While my father tried to control my personal worth, I'd been securing my professional empire. I didn't have to raise my voice, didn't have to beg Daniel or fight Thomas. I just moved one piece across the board, and the game flipped. By sunset, the calls had stopped. The panic had shifted, not to me, but to them. The wedding day came anyway, but instead of walking down an aisle lined with roses, I walked along the Hudson River, the city skyline stretching endlessly in front of me. No veil, no guests, no father waiting at the end of the aisle. Just me, my heels clicking against the pavement, the wind tugging gently at my hair. Somewhere across town, the ballroom sat empty. Tables set, music ready, but no bride. No promises made under false pretenses. No woman diminished by silence. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt release. I thought of my father, scrambling to explain himself. Of Daniel, left stunned in the wreckage of a wedding that never was. Of my mother, finally realizing that control doesn't equal love. And I thought of myself, finally choosing me, fully, without apology. The night before my wedding, my father told my fiancé I was too old for kids. But that was also the night I gave birth to something far greater. My freedom.